What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel for preseason week 2 Giants versus Bears review. I have a lot of positive takeaways from the game, but I also have quite a few areas of concern coming out of this game. To start, I'm immediately putting out a disclaimer. I completely understand this was a preseason game. Completely understand the Bears had all of their backups in the game. I know this. I'm saying this for both the positive things I'm going to say and the negative things I'm saying about the Giants. So now that that's out of the way, let's get right into the review. Before I jump into any of my key takeaways from week 2, just going to quickly go over some of the standouts in the box score, starting with Eli Manning. Same as week 1, he just had one drive. He did start the game, of course. He looked impressive. I am fully in support of him only having one drive. He's a veteran. He has the reps. More so for him, preseason is just working out the kinks, getting the feel again for the football going into the regular season. He's been around long enough. First thing that really jumped out to me was Eli looks so much more comfortable in the pocket. He has a pocket. The offensive line is giving Eli time to look downfield, which, I mean, for us, it's a breath of fresh air, so I can only imagine how it is for him. So in the drive, Eli went 4 for 4, 42 yards, and he did cap that off with a touchdown to Benny Fowler. Daniel Jones got the bulk of the load tonight, taking most of the snaps. He finished with a line of 11 for 14, 161 yards, and he also had a touchdown in the end. I'm going to have a lot more to say on Daniel Jones later on about his week 2 performance, so stay tuned for that. As far as a rushing attack goes, we had one this week, much more improved compared to last week. Jonathan Hillman, he had 16 carries for 56 yards, and he had a touchdown. Rod Smith had a total of 10 carries for 42 yards, and Paul Perkins contributed 6 carries for 35 yards. In terms of receiving, Latimer, he led the team with 60 yards, and much more to come about this entire wide receiver group later on. Very impressed by them. In terms of defense, Marcus Golden, Oshane Ximines, and Pierre all had sacks. And as a team, we had 5 tackles for loss and 5 QB hits, which is huge. So the first thing I'm really going to hop into is, whether we believe it or not, there is a pretty fierce quarterback competition brewing in the Giants QB room right now. In both weeks 1 and 2 of preseason, 1 through 4 look good. 1 through 4 showed signs of excellent quarterback play. They all had some downs, but it is really starting to heat up. First things first, obviously, Eli Manning is the starter. It's been said by everyone from the head coach to ownership. He can go over 50 with 20 interceptions. Eli is going to be the starter at least week 1. Secondly, Daniel Jones, he is the 6th overall pick. He is pretty much locked up that number 2 spot, or at least a spot on that 53-man roster as of right now. Beyond that, it gets very interesting, to be honest. I mean, you got a guy in Kyle Lauletta, 4th round pick just a year ago out of Richmond. He's had minor issues off the field and really hasn't been mind-blowing on it, to be completely honest. Then you got a guy like Alex Tanney, 31 years old, is currently on his 9th team. He's kind of been everywhere, never really a starter, but he has a lot of experience. So when you're looking at what's going to happen here, no team really carries 4 QBs. So it's really just getting that cut down to 1. Who's going to be the odd man out? I mean, clearly here we have to look at it in terms of what is the best for the future of the New York Giants. The way I'm looking at it, what makes more sense? Having 2 veteran guys in the QB room to mentor 1 rookie? Or are you going to have 1 veteran trying to give off knowledge to 2 guys at once while starting top level NFL games. I mean, to me, it's pretty clear who the odd man out here is. You know, Kyle Lauletta, who knows what kind of player he's going to be moving forward, but it was pretty clear when we took Daniel Jones at 6, he was not in our plans, and the Giants kind of already made up their mind. Moving on, but continuing with the theme of quarterbacks, welcome to the NFL, Daniel Jones. In 20 years, when they're fitting him for that gold jacket and NFL Network is doing a sit-down interview, they're going to ask him, what was your welcome to the NFL moment? And I can almost guarantee these moments I'm about to go over will cross his mind, especially after nothing really went wrong in week 1. In week 2, a few things might not have gone exactly the way that we planned. By no means did he not play well. As I mentioned, he was 11 for 14 passing, which included a gorgeous 40-yard dime to Cody Latimer downfield. Latimer is making a legitimate case to be a starting wide receiver come week 1. I'm going to continue talking about that later on. I'm very excited, if you cannot tell, to talk about our wide receiving core. Even with all the injuries, all the drama going on, I'll leave it until later. But immediately following that 40-yard dime to Latimer, Jones botched the snap and gave the ball up to the Bears. It got worse from here. A few possessions later, tackle Victor Sulaco wasn't able to stay with his man after a bump and run by the tight end, and Jones was strip sacked. From that moment on, though, Daniel Jones proved more in terms of whether or not he is pro ready and his demeanor, his character, than any flawless performance ever could. First of all, he made the tackle on the guy that recovered the fumble, and then continued just to move forward. He didn't waver. He kept even keel. I really don't want to make this comparison, but the face didn't change, kind of like another quarterback in New York that we know. He came back out. He didn't let the big stage get to him, and before half, he was able to actually get a touchdown pass on a 2nd and 2 from the 15 to TJ Jones, who is legitimately becoming one of my favorite receivers for the Giants this preseason. Jones to Jones is something I could get used to saying and hearing. CMKC23 on Twitter. Alright, and to bring things down a little bit, back down to earth we go. I didn't want to be negative this video, but it wasn't all good times for the Giants in week 2. A report came out earlier in the day prior to game time that Matt Nagy was not going to be starting any of his primary starters. To me, the expectation was we need to put up 40 on these guys, 40 plus. Or at least early on have several good drives resulting in touchdowns. Knowing that pretty much for the majority of the first quarter and even into the second, we were going to have our starters in. We ended with 32, but down the stretch, basically most of the third and into the fourth quarter, very poor play. A lot of turnovers and just some garbage time scores. That's why I put a disclaimer at the top of this video. Basically just saying we put up 32, but against who exactly? Guys that'll be bagging groceries or on a practice squad in the XFL. In some cases, it wasn't as decisive of a victory as I would have liked, knowing that we're playing 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th stringers. Especially in the first half, only putting up 19 total points, 2 touchdowns, a lot of sloppy play, as I mentioned when I was talking about Daniel Jones, with the fumbles and having that amount of talent on the field against a weaker opponent, I would say. Not the outcome that I was looking for. Was definitely expecting more of a dominant performance early on. If you were able to check out my previous video, the top 5 things I was looking forward to watching in the week 2 game against the Bears, The name Ryan Connelly probably sounds familiar to you. He was our 5th round pick out of Wisconsin. In week 1, he was flying all over the field, and that absolutely continued in week 2. He was clogging up rushing lanes. He was putting pressure on the quarterback. He was forcing runs out of bounds. This kid is fighting for his life for this roster spot, and it absolutely shows. He's a hustler. He's not the type of guy that maybe it's going to show up on the stat sheet every single week, but he absolutely wreaks havoc when he is on the field. I'm telling you right now, if I'm BJ Goodson, I'm stepping up my game that much more because I see Ryan Connelly coming for my job. Just to slap a bold prediction in this video, I wouldn't be surprised by season's end if Ryan Connelly has more starts than BJ Goodson. I'm that high on this guy. Hustle and effort always tops talent. Well, not always, but in the case of Ryan Connelly, who has both talent and he's a hustler, he can't beat it. He wasn't the only standout that we had on defense. As I mentioned, we did have 3 sacks, but looking past those, our D-line looked much better in week 2 and created much more of a destructive atmosphere for the Bears quarterbacks, constantly getting in the face, which resulted in those 5 QB hits, and they were actually able to hold the rushing attack of the Bears to only 34 yards. So great effort by the D-line in week 2. So now, if you didn't actually catch the entire game and just looked at the box score, initially you might think it was a dominant performance by our defense. As I just mentioned, the Bears were only able to rack up 34 rush yards and only had a total of 131 passing yards. Clearly not a very good performance, but our secondary has a ton of work to do. Predominantly speaking about the young guys, Valentine, Love, Tolliver, Baker, we haven't really seen too much of yet. But our secondary, it might not be as blatant as you might think, but on several occasions throughout the game, if there was a legitimate NFL starter in the ball game, the numbers would look a lot different. If Trubisky started this game, it would look completely different than what it does right now. Countless instances of busted coverages. Henry Tolliver, he had a rough night. As I said, maybe not box score wise, but tomorrow in film, he is going to get torn apart. One of those times was on the Bears' first drive out of half. He was inserted into the game, and if Bray doesn't overshoot his receiver, there is nothing but green grass and a 70-yard touchdown ahead of him. That very same drive, Tolliver gets busted again by the same receiver, and again, nothing but green grass in front of him. Inaccurate passes led to him not being more victimized by the receiving game. But as I said, it's not going to be a fun conversation for him tomorrow in film study. Even looking past the poor pass coverage, and yes, I know Valentine's interception in week 1 was very impressive. These young DBs need to stop with the pass interference and the grabbing of the arms and the hands. They need to adjust to the new NFL style play. Before, you might have gotten away with that, grabbing the arm, maybe a hold here and there. It's not going to fly anymore, especially with the new pass interference challenge rules. That adjustment needs to be soon, because it's going to be a rude awakening come the regular season when that stuff's just not going to fly. And to close out, I'm going to finish this video on a high note, and I don't want to overstep, but the Giants receiving core looks primed to shock a lot of people this season. I honestly believe we have more depth than we have had in a very long time. I'm going to throw the disclaimer out one last time. Preseason, not top level talent, facing backups, whatever. A catch is a catch. When the ball is not right on point and the receiver has to adjust his body to make a catch, that's talent. And I think we have that in spades with this core right now. As I mentioned, Cody Latimer, he is on a mission to prove he's just not a return specialist from the Broncos. He wants a starting spot without question. Beyond him, you already know my infatuation with TJ Jones. I think he is an incredible talent who was majorly underutilized with his prior teams. He's finally coming into his own, and he built off a great performance in week 1 with yet another good one in week 2. Losing Odell, of course, was not an easy pill to swallow. Whenever you lose a talent of that level, it's going to sting. I have a feeling throughout the season that might not be weighing on a Giants fan's mind as much as it was when it initially happened. We might not be able to account for his production with just one man, but I really do believe the group that we have built can collectively account for what we're losing. And not to exaggerate, it might exceed it. As crazy as that sounds to say, I'm just very pleased with this group of guys. Even after losing one in Corey Coleman, who might have been a starter to season-ending injuries, Sterling Shepard with his thumb just kind of up in the air at this point, Golden Tate suspension, and of course, as I just mentioned, Odell being traded. I am just so pleased that it's the next man up mentality, younger guys stepping up, filling in those roles, and it gets me excited to see what it's going to look like week 1. That's pretty much all I got for you today. That's the full recap, my takeaways from the Giants week 2 win against the Bears. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I put a lot of work into these videos, and I believe the analysis and what I provide, top level. In all seriousness, thank you so much for clicking on the video. Later on this week, Sunday night, I'm going to be posting my first Madden 20 gameplay. It is New York Giants franchise. We'll jump right into preseason game number 1 in that. Beyond that, guys, I'll see you in the next one.